Go ahead and unmute the mic whenever you're ready to start.
Good to go?
Yes.
All right. Well, welcome to the Subcommittee on Market Participation. It is January 12th, 2024 at 2 p.m. We'll start off with a roll call and get this call to order. So Member Buffon?
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Here.
And Member Carefield, I believe you're calling in.
Hello. Yes, I'm here.
All right. Member Joy?
Here.
And Dr. Spiritos? All right, and I'm Chair Terry, and that will work as far as a quorum to get us going. Let's start off with public comment. I know we've got a few people that are potentially calling in. So if you're going to call in for public comment, please raise your hand, and we'll call on you when the time's right. But we'll open it up to anybody in the in the audience in person first.
Sorry, just one moment, Church. Amber needs to read in the joining information first.
Okay, apologize. Amber, sorry about that. Go ahead.
No problem. To provide public comment via telephone, call 669-444-9171. Enter webinar ID 826-3153-3396, followed by passcode 166597.
Thank you very much. And we'll circle back and we'll start here in person to allow anybody that needs to call in to give time to process that and call in. So go ahead, sir. If you'd like to step up closer to the microphone and the floor.
Microphones are at each end of the table.
And if you don't mind just stating your name.
For the record, my name is Abad Pisa. I was going to try to write some of this stuff down to kind of tackle it piece by piece, but basically just looking at from A to what is that, E, it looks like you guys are just expanding on the subcommittees that you guys are doing, which money-wise isn't what we were wanting. We're wanting that money to go to schools. You know, that was the initial thing that this money was supposed to be going to, not towards the CCB's pockets. Another thing that I noticed on here is something about the regulations of the potency of the cannabis. Truth be told, I worked in the facilities and I left because of the practices that were taking place. The quality of the cannabis is garbage. And that's why no matter how much you guys are trying to sell at an even lower price, people just don't want to buy it because it's trash. Another thing is I've actually been trying to get a licensed facility myself for more than 10 years. I keep getting hit in the face with you either got to buy a license, which is over $3 million, or you got to wait for you guys to open it up, which you guys haven't in over 10 years. You know, it feels like more than 10 years for me, but that's another thing that I've been arguing is for you guys to make it so that anyone can enter the cannabis industry just like any other business. You go, you pay your $300-400, you get your license, and you can, you know, go fuck off and get it done. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the type of person I am, man. Like, business is, you sell it, you're in business. You know what I'm saying? All this other business entities with the CIEC and trying to show people how to start a business when you're talking about business plans and like plan to fail. You know what I'm saying? You got to go hard, and depending on how hard you go, that's how high you're going to be able to get. And I've seen that with anyone that's willing to start something from the ground up. You grind yourself into powder and you build yourself back up. You know what I'm saying? But you got to give people the opportunity to do that. Things are getting more violence in schools. Things are getting more violence here amongst people. And it's because of hopelessness. You know what I'm saying? Hopelessness takes on many different forms. And kids see when their parents want to do something and can't. You know what I'm saying? People feel when people are feeling frustrated and aggravated, and all these things are starting to affect them differently. You know what I'm saying? They don't know how to respond to it, so they're going to respond violently.
30 seconds, please.
Yeah, I don't know. That's about it, man. I appreciate your guys' time.
Appreciate your comments. Anybody else locally? Okay. Do we have anybody calling in?
There is currently no one on the line for public comment.
Okay, thank you, Amber. All right, moving on to the next agenda item, introduction to members. I think for this one, if you all don't mind, I'll just pass it around the room. If you can introduce yourself, your background, we'll try and keep it relatively brief. And really your interest and your goals for this board. If you have any other than that, there will be an opportunity to discuss that later as well. So Member Buffon, if you'd like to go.
Hey, my name is Nicole Buffon. I am a plant medicine advocate and community educator. I serve as an executive with Minorities for Medical Marijuana and on the board of directors for the Chamber of Cannabis. I'm hoping that my experience with M4MM, as well as with the Chamber, being both women-led organizations, that we have some opportunities to offer, some new ideas to offer for the state of Nevada to bring more diversity and market participation. So far, that's all I've been able to digest. And I'm really looking forward to the next meeting where we'll be able to kind of discuss more in detail what those ideas might look like. And that's my hope for this participation on this board.
Perfect. Thank you. Member Joy.
Brawley Joy. I have been in the cannabis industry now for since 2014, the beginning. We were founders of a vertical here in Clark County and the city of Las Vegas. Ran that for a little over 10 years and then moved on to a new position as the general manager of GB Sciences here in Las Vegas. So just over a decade of experience in the industry. Paid a lot of stupid tax, made a lot of mistakes, and here to help guide minorities and veterans and anybody else we can help on avoiding some of those pitfalls.
Perfect. Thank you. And Member Carefield.
Yes, my name is Garrison Carefield. I am currently the director of greenhouse operations at Silver Lion Farms, which is a hemp farm in northern Nevada. I've been cultivating cannabis since 2008 in California. Came to Nevada in 2020, and currently, like I said, I've been operating not only cultivation facilities but dispensaries since the early, about 2010. So that's pretty much my background. Again, same as you, probably just trying to help people, stay out of those pitfalls that you're talking about there. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And I'm Chair Shane Terry, and I guess my history in the industry started in 2014 when I burned all my military bridges to go after some cannabis licenses. So I've been involved in the industry as a vertically integrated business since then. Currently the CEO and founder of Taproot Labs. So we are mainly focused on production and dispensing. Outside of that, background-wise, that I would like to introduce or contribute to this subcommittee is I do come from a veteran background, which is sorry, problem. Come from a veteran background, did 17 years in the Air Force before finding myself in these ventures. So that's that. And then we've got Dr. Spiritos too, who's not able to attend today, but we'll get his background and intentions for the next meeting. All right, so moving on, I guess I probably should have prefaced this a little bit more as far as what are the goals for this meeting in particular. Obviously, this is the first time that we've all met as a group, so I think the idea here is to set a little bit of direction, some ground rules on how we can operate, how we can make this a little bit more effective. And I think today's meeting will probably be quicker and more administrative. Seems like somebody's definitely lowered the temperature in the room. So I think they're trying to force us to be more efficient and carry on with our 3-day weekend on a Friday afternoon. But really, what I wanted to do for this meeting is just get everybody together, making sure that we all had an opportunity to discuss the regulations, figure out what it is that this subcommittee was formed to do, what we need to cover, and then start formulating how we're going to move forward, assign some areas of responsibility, some direction that we'd like to go, give us all some time to absorb it, and then come back for the next meeting with a little bit more purpose and some deliverables. And then from there, I think we'll really start finding our rhythm. So I wanted to start off with I guess the next point of our agenda with the subcommittee goals. And this is just going to be for discussion only. So this subcommittee was really to dive into NRS 678A.310 and NRS 678A.450. Both those regulations are available on the CCB website if anybody needs to go look those up. You all have printouts of the regulations that you're able to take home, put on your fridge, review, do some homework on them. But really, the way that I look at this subcommittee is we almost have two different areas of focus that we need to address. One would be demographically, and the other one I would say more on the economically. So if you take a look at 678.310, Section D, it specifically says a subcommittee on market participation to review and make recommendations on matters relating to the participation of women-owned businesses, minority-owned business, veteran-owned businesses, LGBTQ-owned businesses, and local agriculture in the cannabis industry. So that is what I was referring to, more of the demographic assessment that we'll need to do as part of the subcommittee. The second portion of this is under 678.450, and that one says the board shall by regulation establish a pilot program for identifying opportunities for an emerging small cannabis business to participate in the cannabis industry. As used in the subsection, emerging small cannabis business means a cannabis related business that A, is in existence, operational and operated for a profit, B, maintains its principal place of business in this state, and C, satisfies requirements for the number of employees and annual gross revenue established by the board by regulation. And that last part is, at least my interpretation of it, is why I said that there's an economic consideration that we will need to discuss and figure out when we're trying to classify what might be an emerging small cannabis business. What would those gross revenues be? What would that bracket for the number of employees be? And how would we further delineate an emerging small cannabis business from, say, a larger operation that wouldn't fall under that same criteria? So those are some of the objectives that we are going to have to assess and look at over the next couple months. Any questions or comments on those two?
Real quick question. So are we just focusing on these two subsections in those laws, or are we trying to digest everything that's in this statute?
Under .310?
Yeah, so yeah, under .310, are we just focusing on this, on 2D?
So our subcommittee is just focused on D.
On
correct.
2D, okay.
There are other subcommittees.
That are covering the other stuff.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And, and this will kind of lead into the community input side, but if you have comments that would relate to those others, then I would suggest we'll announce an email and you can kind of direct it to those chairs, and they should be diving in deeper on those
Perfect.
topics.
And so the same applies to 450.450, I would assume.
As far as
focusing on
Section 4.
Okay, got it.
Yes.
And then the other question I had, do we know the how often we're gonna have the meetings?
Great question.
Okay.
That was actually going to be timeline number D on the agenda,
Oh,
but
okay. I'll wait then. That's fine.
yeah, let's
That's fine.
we'll definitely get there.
Yeah, okay.
So one of the things that makes it challenging for these meetings is that we need to follow open meeting law, which basically means that it limits the types of discussions that we can have individually and offline. So I think one thing that I think should be important to all of us is making sure that we get the community inputs outside of our own inputs and our own businesses that we represent, but making sure that we're opening the door for the rest of the community that might not be on the subcommittee to be able to have a voice and get their inputs in. So I think that would be, whether these are people that are agent card holders or just other members in the community, customers, patients, et cetera, we certainly do want to be able to open it up for those inputs. The way, and Chrissy, please, if there's anything that I misspeak on, feel free to give me a nudge or interrupt. But yeah, I think the best way to do that is if anybody has a copy of the agenda, which you can find online, at the bottom of the agenda in the section that's called public notice, there's an email address in there, and I'll say it out loud, but anybody can go and find this online. It's cacmeetings@ccb.nv.gov. And that would be the best place for anybody that's watching this, or even if somebody comes to you as individual members in between meetings and say, hey, I've got these great ideas, this is what I'd like to represent. Probably best to have them email that email address, and then it'll be disseminated to all of us, so we'll still be able to see it. And that way, that's probably the easiest way to get the communication from the industry, where we don't have any concerns about violating any open meeting laws.
So quick question I had, in the highlighted areas here, I think definition on what we're talking about on public terms. I think we're pretty comfortable with minority owned. We're all understanding that LGBTQ, veterans. Do have a question on local agriculture in the cannabis industry. What would be the definition of that term? And then what would be the definition of emerging small cannabis businesses to participate in the cannabis industry? Are we talking about other smaller prior licensed facilities? Are we talking about new licensees coming in through the consumption lounge side of things right now? Or both, or all, or?
Well, let's start with the more complex question, the second one. My interpretation when I read this under 450 is when it defines emerging small cannabis businesses, there's a couple of criteria that's listed in statute. So the first in section A is that is in existence, operational, and operated for a profit. So I think that in existence would mean and operational would be a currently operating business. Okay. So not somebody that's coming online, or not somebody that
is acquiring a license.
Correct. And then the second is maintains its principal place of business in this state. So I think that one's pretty straightforward. If you're licensed in Nevada, then that probably applies to most of us. And then this is the one that I think that we have more leeway as a subcommittee to define. Mm-hmm. And so really the two things that we are going to be responsible for defining with this statute is the number of employees and the annual gross revenue. And so, for example, don't read into this, these are just random numbers. We might say something like, for subsection C, an emerging small business would be under $6 million in revenue and under 20 employees. But those are some of the things that we will probably offline have to take some considerations for. I mean, we all know our businesses and where we would sit. And I think that's where we have some discretion on how we want to define this, that obviously captures the intent of the regulation, but isn't so exclusive. We have nobody that qualifies for it. Right? So.
Okay, I have a question to follow up on that. Emerging small cannabis business. I'm not sure if I understand what that means exactly. I know we just went through the bullet points here, but are you saying somebody with a license?
Yes, I think by definition is in existence and operational. My opinion would be that means that somebody is licensed and it's an activated license, not a provisional one. Or
putting emerging in front of that is a little bit confusing.
Yeah,
it makes it sound like it's new businesses.
It's on its way.
Yeah,
maybe an early stage venture that has the potential to grow beyond their current state. I think when I've seen this, trying to apply this to other businesses outside of cannabis, I think the intention here that we should look at is if we're looking at a small business, and small businesses are typically resource limited, how are we creating the right landscape for a small business to be able to compete with the larger businesses that are often publicly funded, have raised hundreds of millions of dollars, but have a lot more resource than this? How can we level the playing field to make sure that we give our small businesses a chance? I think this ties back into almost like the demographics from before. I think for us to represent an industry and represent our customers, we need to think about who is our customer and what do they look like? If we can't identify our customers and we can't relate to them, then it makes it difficult to serve them and represent them. And so I think that's part of one of our challenges is making sure that the progression of our industry doesn't just go to a small group of elite, well-capitalized, highly resourced businesses, that we can cover the spectrum of representation from the community as well.
Well, I think these licenses, starting at, a couple $1 million, means that you have to have quite a significant amount of capital, even if you're small, to initially get in and buy that license. $3 million is not, $2 to $3 million is not a small amount of capital to raise, not like the young man was saying, a regular business license, right, for any other industry. So obviously we know cannabis is different. And I think that, as we talk about trying to bring in more women and minority-owned businesses, understanding that they are operating in the shadows right now in Nevada, if they don't have a license, right? And how do we get them more involved? They're operating in the gray market because they are, making food that's infused or, those kind of things. And how do we bring them, how do we say this market is open for you as well without them having a license? I was hoping that that's what this type of subcommittee would take into consideration, because a lot of those businesses that come from that community, minority-owned, women-owned, didn't have the capital initially in the initial round to be able to purchase a license. And so they're operating in the shadows.
And I think that's totally valid. And that one of the challenges that we have is, like, per the statute, when I read this, it doesn't look like these are people that we want to create a change to the licensing structure,
Right.
to qualification criteria. It's almost like we're looking at who is currently qualified in the market and how does that, who constitutes an emerging small business from our current qualifications. But to your point, I agree. It's for those of us that have been involved in applications, it's $250,000 cash just to qualify, and that doesn't even include your build out costs, your operational costs. From there, there's obviously it's to each their own as far as their strategy on, do you want to start a $500 million business and be the largest operator in the state, or do you want to take more of a small business bootstrapped approach and be a little bit on the leaner side? But I think for the purposes of this committee, I think we do at least want to start our discussions with who's currently in the market and how do we make sure that those businesses are getting a chance to grow. Then probably a later stage conversation would be, now that we've solved that problem, what do we need to do to expand it out and allow those people that the groups that you mentioned that potentially needed a chance but didn't have one, and will this apply to them eventually down the road? That might be a little bit outside the scope of our
This committee. And to his point, emerging small business in the space and the year that we're living in right now in Nevada would be those consumption lounge license holders that have gotten a chance to come in, that are minority, veteran, women-owned businesses. And I think if we took a practical approach to this particular regulation and say emerging small cannabis businesses, they would be those 40 licenses that we take a look at, minus the retail, 20 licenses, the independents,
Right.
and the social equity licenses.
Because really the independents are the newcomers to the industry.
Social, right, exactly.
And Chrissy, I'm not sure if you know this, but would this per statute eliminate discussion over provisional licenses?
I don't think that they would necessarily qualify for discussion under this subsection.
Okay.
That's interesting.
So I think that's going to be one of the challenges of the consumption lounges, is that most of those licenses are provisional to date and haven't actually gotten the final
Right.
approval to operate.
One.
So therefore, doesn't really qualify under 4A.
Got it. Thank you.
And Member Joy, to go back to your question about the agriculture. Great question. I had the same question. I didn't know if that meant, the relationship with Department of Agriculture, or if it is more of the non-cannabis agriculture businesses in the state, which,
Says
In the cannabis industry, which would,
yeah.
So are we talking about hemp farmers?
well, they're not in our industry, actually. So if we're,
Cannabis and hemp are not in the same industry in this state? Or,
It's different licensing schemes, but I guess
Okay.
technically you could say that hemp is cannabis.
technically,
No,
in the state size though, yeah, it's a different license,
Mhm,
completely different setup.
mhm, mhm,
We're in our own ecosystem
mhm,
inside the cannabis industry as licensed operators.
mhm.
So
And the hemp industry doesn't have a hemp compliance board, right? Just the
they
cannabis
deal with
compliance.
probably
Department of
Department of Ag.
Yeah. Don't quote me, I don't know for sure, I'm not in that industry, but I know the CCB is not
Managing
monitoring,
hemp.
regulating hemp.
Okay, okay.
You know, I do know, you know, not to name names, it's not my business, but I know that there are companies in Nevada that are licensed cultivations and also have pretty
Hemp farm.
successful hemp farms and non-cannabis farms as
Yeah.
well. So
Produce. GLP is a perfect
absolutely.
example.
that's what I was gonna say. So there's a lot of people I think that have ventured outside of just the silo of marijuana cultivation and started to work with local ag too. So that might be one of those things that we discuss is like, you know, is I would also imagine that a lot of these regulations and focal areas came from lessons learned in other states or what other states are doing as well. So it might be one of the things that we need to dig into between meetings and figure out, you know, how does, you know, do any of these, is there anything that we can take lessons learned from other state markets and how they've incorporated it? And I think that'll be some of the deliverables that we talk about soon. And, you know, maybe that's something that we can research and come back for the next meeting with a little bit.
So as far as this committee is concerned right now, though, we don't really have a clear definition of what local agriculture is in this industry.
I do not, but that is definitely something that I will take note of. And
If I'm looking at it, it sounds like, you know, potentially standalone cultivators that are non-vertical or standalone cultivator and production facilities, non-vertical, but maybe we can find some ways that those groups can get more participation in certain areas on sales and things like that.
Makes sense.
There's a lot of guys out there struggling,
Yep.
a lot of us.
All right. Let's see here. So moving on to the next one, and this will kind of segue perfect from where you said, what I planned on doing for this meeting as well. It's like, I think we all have pretty diverse backgrounds, you know, to your point, you know, if you might be more representative of agriculture than me being more of a manufacturer and a retail operator. So what I did want to do is assign a little bit of homework and have, I don't want to call them subject matter experts, maybe like a person of responsibility or something like that. But I wanted to have some deliverables that we all can come back with for the next meeting after doing a little bit more research. And I think this would be more focused on, at least for this stage, the demographics that are defined in 310 Section D. And really the idea is we're going to divide these up amongst us. If we have any volunteers or things that you're passionate about representing. And really the idea is once we divide these up, we'll go independently, do some research. I would encourage you to go out to your community, look and see what other states that have gone before Nevada might be a little bit more mature as far as their timeline of operations and have tackled some of these things a while back. And the idea is that we can go and look and see what's worked and what hasn't worked in other states and come back to the table with some ideas, some research on how we might want to apply some of those lessons learned to the things that we need to define for our subcommittee. So really, I think where this would go as far as a deliverable, we'll divide up these and go and do a little bit of research, then come back to the table for the next one and be prepared to give about a little 4 or 5 minute report on what you've learned, what you've seen, some potential pitfalls. I would also encourage anybody else that might be listening in from the community or even in your personal discussions with people, as they start understanding where we're going with this subcommittee, if they have inputs, that would be a great time to funnel it through the CAC email that's again on the back of the agenda. And not only are we doing the homework and the research, but if we really want to represent the people that are our customers, our consumers, other stakeholders in the industry, this is their opportunity as well to be able to provide an input that that may or may not be redirected to you. And then as this starts progressing and we start coming up with like further deliverables and focal areas, whichever area of responsibility you choose, you're really going to be that lead point of contact for that, be able to, again, lack of no better word, be the subject matter expert on what that might mean and how we want to implement that moving forward.
Okay. And when you're referring to demo, you mean women owned, minority owned?
Correct.
All these categories.
Correct.
Stated. Okay.
On that note, you did mention, I'm not trying to volunteer you, but you did mention cultivation. I don't know if you have any interest in diving a little bit deeper on that.
Yeah, I can take that. That's fine.
And then of course, if there's anything else that you, of course.
Help anybody with, I figure we're all just going to be collecting information and then we can pool resources and share what we have.
Definitely. And I think what we'll find too is a lot of these when we're looking at other states that have, called the social equity programs, a lot of these might be grouped together as similar initiatives, just different qualifications or different criteria. Member Carefield, I don't want to exclude you just because you're calling in remote, but I'm curious if there's anything within this. I know that you also have a pretty robust agriculture, call it a non-marijuana operation as well.
Sure.
So that might be something that you have some inputs on.
Yeah. Obviously, the agriculture and cultivation is where I'm kind of in my space. Similar to what you said, Raleigh, in regards to these smaller cultivators, they don't really, unfortunately, have the same market share or ability to control their pricing that some of these bigger guys do. And so I do agree with you that the smaller cultivators definitely need to be need some more some bigger voices behind them, and then but also just minority in general. I'm in rural northern Nevada. That's where I live. I live in Wells, which is a population of 1,000. We are very underrepresented up here. Most of the cities in this area have one dispensary. A lot of them are Native American. So this area is very underserved compared to the Reno and the Vegas areas. So market participation would for minorities and just people who underprivileged is very needed in this area of the state. So you tell me, Shane, where would you like me? I can jump in wherever you'd like. I would love to do some research.
No, I'm glad you brought up rural Nevada because I also have an operation in Winnemucca, and I agree with you. Is the outside of Reno and Las Vegas, tends to be, I would say, underserved, but also kind of forgotten about when it comes to something for us to remember is I've always viewed adult use or call it retail cannabis as, yes, there's the 21 and up component, but a significant subsector of that are medical patients that are using the adult use programs to be able to get access to the medicine that they need. So I think when we're talking about some of the rural parts of the state, to be able to make sure that our customers and patients have access to medicine, have the distribution points, are properly represented so they can get access to the same opportunities that we have down here. I think those are important considerations. So I know it doesn't specifically say, rural Nevada in this, but I think that is certainly something that we should discuss. And, how do we make that more permissive and making sure that that these resources are available to everybody. All right. So Member Buffong, anything that you are?
Well, the two that jump out at me are women and minority owned businesses. As falling into both of those categories, I feel like, and the network and resources that I have within the community, not just here in Nevada, but globally with my resources at Minorities for Medical Marijuana, that I would definitely love to take on either one of those or both. I'm just interested in how we can, we already, with M4MM, we already have programs that I'm looking at how we can implement them here in Nevada that we've done across the country. So yeah, those are my two.
So does that sound like a volunteer?
Yes,
All
for
right,
sure.
I think that's pretty fitting.
Yeah,
So let's do that.
for sure.
All right, and then, I've definitely got a veterans background, so I can probably speak to that. So I don't mind picking up the veteran and LGBTQ owned businesses. And Member Carefield, if you want to almost take like that rural side, and maybe that we can consider that as a minority owned businesses and work with Member Buffong for some of those inputs. And then also working with Member Joy on the agriculture piece, since I know that you've got a pretty strong footprint in that space as well.
Great.
Okay,
Perfect.
so basically, what does this mean as far as deliverables and what are we going to come back with? So I think what I would like for the next subcommittee is, again, you'll get a couple minutes to speak, and if you can address some of the following. One would be the challenges that you foresee are particular specific to your area of responsibility. What sort of structural or call it regulatory or legislative help we might want to look at to make sure that those different sections are properly represented. And then also please take a look at programs that you've seen in other states, and there might be some really good programs that have worked well. I think what we've seen probably historically, there's a lot of good intentions that didn't work out so well, but they're also valuable lessons learned. So, I've always felt that when cannabis states operate in a silo without learning from our neighbors, we're doing ourselves a disservice when we're having to learn the same lessons that have been learned before us.
Real quick, I'm sorry.
Nope.
Point number two, you said legislative language, recommend legislative language. Is that what it was?
So I think this kind of ties into 450, where we're talking about emerging small businesses and how do we make sure that these groups and small businesses have a chance. And I think there's, like I said, there's the demographic side, there's the economic side, and often those come hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the challenges that that we get to tackle with this is, how do we set up a system in the future to make sure that those groups have proper representation and the system's not set up to push them out or not give them a chance. So I do think that would include setting up regulatory framework. And I think that part of our, I don't want to call it authority, but part of our goal here is to be able to recommend to the CCB what we feel would be impactful for the industry or what we might need to consider in the future. So
Yes to that question.
exactly. And I think a great place to start would be even here in Nevada. If you go to Department of Economic Development, you'll see that there are a lot of resources, not necessarily cannabis specific, but there are a lot of resources for minorities, small businesses. You can see how they're getting classified on that website. You can see some of the programs that are available. So again, I'm just planting a couple seeds of what we might consider recommending. It could be mentorship programs if you qualify for this, and some potential resources, FaceTime with other operators. It could be a discount on licensing fees, potentially a discount on taxes to small businesses. Yeah, I would say all of those are on the table for potential discussion. I don't think we need to limit ourselves to what we see other states doing. I think especially early on, we'll probably start to refine this as we start having meetings and we narrow the scope on what we want to focus on. but don't think too myopically. So kind of broaden our horizons. Let's bring everything to the table. And, we'll have to eliminate some things as we go, of course. But if we really want to create something unique and different, then we got to think outside the box a little bit. So, all right. Any questions as far as what we'll be focusing on between this meeting and the next? Ready for your timeline question?
Yes.
So, all right. I think for the next one, if it works for you, I'd like to try and set our next meeting about a month from now. That should give us enough time. We'll circulate some potential dates outside of this meeting, so we'll get a response the same nature that you did before. So we'll be able to, I think for the next one, no problem. That should give us enough time to do some preliminary research and work and come back. And then depending on what we decide for the next one, that'll really determine more of the pace for the follow-on meetings. But at least to keep this active, I'm grateful that we got to start off January with this and get a good start to the year. But we'll keep the momentum going. I think we can check in about 30 days from now and see what's next.
Quick question. How many meetings total did we plan on having?
I think
Before, isn't the report due March 1st?
I don't believe there was, do you know if there was any actual deadline for ours? I thought that was.
There is no deadline. That's for the other subcommittee.
Oh,
Thank you.
okay, thank you. Okay.
So really, I think we've got some leeway, and
Okay.
I know what I would like to do is during the next meeting, really define what our more specific goals are going to be. And then once we report on these, we kind of understand a little bit more on how much homework we have to do.
Okay.
That's probably going to determine how many meetings we need to have. I think a lot of this too is we want to make this, we obviously don't want it to drag on without being able to provide recommendations that could be implemented. But we also don't want to close the door before we give everybody the opportunity to hear about what we're doing, provide the right inputs, and really solicit the feedback from the community as well.
Okay.
All right. So that covers timeline. Future meetings, like I mentioned, Sarah will circulate a couple options for us. And I think before we open it up to public comment, is there anything from any of the members that wanted to highlight?
Good.
Okay. Chrissy, anything we missed or do you want to contribute in?
So far, so good.
All right.
Yes, Joseph.
Okay, on that note, we will move to public comments, and just like before, we'll start with public comments here locally in case anybody needs to call in. And Amber, do you need to repeat the public comment language?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Okay, great. So I think we have one locally. Welcome, and the floor is yours, sir. And if you don't mind, keep it to about 2 minutes.
Hello, excuse me. Hi, good afternoon. For the record speaking, my name is Timothy Ellie Otto, and I represent Horror Lounge, one of the social equity applicant that wasn't licensed or went through. I had previously submitted questions to our previous CCB chair, Tyler Clemens, I believe so, in regards to the licensing process previously. And I have also addressed that concern to our new, I believe, chair as well. So I'm here to just encourage that it be investigated. Why so? Because we're literally here now talking about the same issues that we've been discussing since the introduction of the social equity bill. I'd like to include that Chandler, a gentleman by the name of Chandler Cooks, previous CAC Dean of Students, sat in this room with, just like a member of the subcommittee chair as we're speaking right now. He was issued a license. Chamber of Cannabis. If it's not a representative from the Chamber of Cannabis, I believe Tina's roommate, Chamber of Cannabis. If it's not Chamber of Cannabis, it's CEIC. So whatever the agenda is, Scott Rutledge, it is literally same cycle. As we stand right now, there is still minimum representation as in licenses. I would like to play one thing. During the previous MJ BizCon, this happened.
Very amped up right now. Yeah, I'm feeling very fatigued. You're gonna have your dance card's gonna be full. Okay, people are gonna be, what you're doing here is disruptive, and it's been for 5 years. And nobody's come in and done this before. This is just it's just different.
30 seconds.
There's something going on here. I'm really enjoying this. It's very nice.
Okay. Lack of opportunity. We have sales declining. You just heard for your ears. I was interviewed on the Adam Dunn show. Adam is known in the industry as a breeder. He knows about cannabis. Okay. What else do I have to say? Keep taking opportunity from the ones that have laid the bricks, foundation, and then you wonder why it's a race to the bottom. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other public comments locally? Our massive audience? Okay, Amber, is there anybody online that had comments?
Caller with the last 4 digits 4185. Please state your name for the record and limit your comments to 2 minutes. Dial *6 to unmute.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, awesome. This is Abby Kaufman, for the record, ABBYKAUFMANN, and I serve as the secretary for the board of directors for the Chamber of Cannabis and also chair our Commerce Committee, which deals with industry participation and collecting industry feedback to advocate for those changes to our regulators. So I just wanted to tap in to just express my gratitude for the existence of this committee, though it is, mandated by statute. I believe the statute was in existence from 2 legislative sessions ago, so I'm glad to see that, 3 years later, it's happening, to nobody's fault that's on this committee. And I think the timing is perfect because the CCB released its annual demographic study yesterday, in which 60% of respondents identified as male and 52% identified as white. And so I do think it's kind of interesting that the subcommittee's focus is on subsection 450 and subsection 310, because I imagine that in order to be an emerging small cannabis business, and be in existence and operational, a lot of the groups and the ability for the groups in the subsection 310 for women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, veterans, LGBTQ, and I interpret the agriculture as non-cannabis agriculture operators that might want to enter the industry, just like the other kind of groups that have not been in the industry yet, but I digress. I feel like those groups haven't been given a chance to the same chance or have the same opportunities to even get to the point where they're at, where they are an emerging business by this definition of emerging. But I do think it is telling that even in the regulation itself, it says to look at identifying opportunities for an emerging small business to participate in the industry, almost implying that if they are, even though they're operational, they're not yet participating somehow. But that's all to say, I look forward, I plan to share, the existence of this committee with with my committee, the Commerce Committee, and we'll look forward to working together to identify ways to increase market participation and make Nevada's cannabis industry more diverse. So thank you.
Thank you, Abby.
Thank you, Abby.
There are no
Amber.
additional callers online.
Perfect. Okay, well, with that, we'll call it meeting adjourned. Hope everybody has a great MLK weekend, and we'll circulate the next one. And also, just one more time, reminder for the community to solicit any inputs to the CAC email. And if any of you need to communicate with any other members, that's also a safe way to do it to make sure that we don't violate any meeting law. So thank you for your time.
Thank you
And
so much.
Member Carefield, have a great weekend. Thanks for
Thank you.
dialing in.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you.
I just wanted to provide